Happy Friday, friends. On today's Locked On NHL, we've got more arena news in Arizona to talk about, a jersey retirement for a King. Well, it's a Ranger, but you get it. And we'll have a look ahead to the full weekend slate of games in the NHL and more.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders, and you can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYIVSNYR. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcasting platforms, and you can watch us over on YouTube. How you doing today, Gil?
I am good. Happy Friday and welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back today. Last night we had Trevor Zegras pulling off a Michigan versus Montreal. Now, I want to talk about this because amongst the Locked On NHL hosts, we had a bit of an argument over what to call that move. I call it the Michigan because it originated with Mike Legg from the University of Michigan back in 1996. But of course, I think some of the younger people were calling it the Svetch. I'm okay with the lacrosse because that's the style of the goal. But if you're going to brand it, it's the Michigan, right?
Hey, as a Michigan alum, yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Go blue.
That
Yeah,
is
I like the
absolutely
Michigan.
correct.
The lacrosse works also, I guess, if you want to go that route. Interesting sort of a debate about it during the ESPN Plus broadcast in between periods, where Barry Melrose was saying, he didn't like it because it sort of took away from the traditional skills that make hockey the game that it is. And there was a little debate there as well. I don't think you're going to get away with it all that often, that it's something that's really going to detract from the game. And, it does get those non-traditional hockey fans will watch video showing plays like that. So it does give the game, I think, a little bit more exposure also. So I enjoy it. And it's a heck of a skilled play. You got to have incredible hand-eye coordination to pull that off.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll see more of that from him and from other guys in the future. Maybe a new style of goal will get innovated, and that'll be fun as well. Moving on to one of the biggest stories in the league right now is the continuing saga that is the Arizona Coyotes and their arena situation. Of course, we know that they're getting kicked out of the Gila River Arena in Glendale. Their lease is up at the end of the season. They do not have a new arena deal yet, which they're trying to work out in Tempe, Arizona. And so it seems like what they're planning to do is temporarily relocate to the new arena being built by Arizona State University. Use that for 3 or 4 years, and hopefully in the meantime, they'll have worked out a new arena deal and it'll get built.
That is the hope right now, but there's not a lot of seating capacity at this arena that they're talking about. I mean, you're talking about, I think, 5,000 fans at most being able
Right.
to fit in there. Memo to the Coyotes, that's not NHL capacity. You're going to lose a lot of money if you're playing your games at that arena. I could see it for 1 year, maybe two, but boy, that is one heck of a difficult way to try to earn enough money to make your payroll every year. It's sort of putting them behind the eight ball before the season even starts.
Yeah, not only that, they will have to build their own facilities to use, like for locker rooms, because according to NCAA rules, they're not allowed to use the facilities for the Arizona State team. And the other issue related to that is that Arizona State's schedule will take priority over the Coyotes should they choose to use this option. And the schedule for the Sun Devils is already locked in for next season, and a lot of their games are Friday and Saturday nights, which is prime time for NHL games to pull in attendance and revenue. So I think it's going to be a big struggle for them, but there seems to be this overriding need to keep the team in Arizona no matter what. And also, I think they're going with this option because a lot of their season ticket holders are in that area and they want to move to that area anyway. So this will appease those fans in the interim.
Yeah, and look, I guess if you only you may not have all the best dates if Arizona State takes priority over the use of the facility, but if you can only sell 5,000 tickets to begin with, it's not like you need to sell a lot of tickets to fill the place.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of a mess. We'll see if this gets locked in for next season. I know there's a lot of places that will say we'll take you temporarily. I'm looking at you, Quebec, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's just this entrenched need in the NHL to somehow make the Coyotes work in Arizona. I don't disagree with it necessarily, but to what end and by what means is a good question to ask.
It's got to be viable. I mean,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you wait until they get that new arena built, if it takes 2 years, 3 years, whatever it's going to be. But they've got to have a way to be successful and sell enough tickets to thrive and survive once that arena is completed. Otherwise, you're back to square one.
Yep. Well, we will definitely be keeping an eye on this story and what goes on with the Coyotes as this all progresses. Switching gears a little bit to a couple of controversial hockey players, the first of which, Jacob Panetta, was the ECHL player that was involved in displaying a racist gesture toward Jordan Subban in a game in Jacksonville against the South Carolina team there. And they had their hearing, and it came out that Panetta is going to be suspended for the remainder of the season, which adds up to 38 games. But he does have a chance to appeal this in March with completion of an NHL, diversity and inclusion program. And I'm of mixed feelings about this. I think it's important that there is some rehabilitation effort that happens here, but I also think that the suspension should remain no matter what in this case. But I think one thing I do appreciate in the decision was in the language from the ECHL commissioner. He said that insensitive actions and gestures, regardless of intent, cannot be tolerated in our game. And I think that's important because a lot of people were saying, oh, he didn't mean it. He didn't know it was racist. Well, what matters is intent and impact, or what matters is the impact, I should say, not the intent of what he was doing. And I think it's important that that lesson be learned.
I agree. And look, you don't want that kind of action, that kind of gesture being a part of the game. There's no place for it in hockey. I applaud the ECHL for the suspension. I hope that they do sustain it. Like you said, I like the idea of there being some kind of rehabilitation. I mean, here's a 26-year-old minor league hockey player, and let's even say he plays hockey for 5 more years, and that may be generous, but hopefully this is a life lesson for a guy like this, and that it sets an example for other players in the minors and throughout hockey, because there is obviously look, this goes beyond hockey. This is a cultural issue in our society that hockey is reflecting, and hopefully hockey will lay down the law that there's no place for this kind of action, gesture, sentiment in the game of hockey and in our society.
Yeah, could not agree with you more, Gil. I think you're spot on there. The other controversial player we have to talk about is Evander Kane, who was cleared of any wrongdoing, according to the NHL, for a potential second violation of COVID regulations at the AHL level when he was with the Barracuda for San Jose. And in the decision, they said there wasn't overwhelming evidence. So it's just one of those things where he could have done something wrong, but they didn't have direct evidence to prove it, so they could not fine him or suspend him for anything.
Yeah, you know, yeah. It almost feels like they're kind of trying to sweep this under the rug a little bit.
A little bit.
That's in short, that's my take. I think they would like the Evander Kane situation to quiet down. They want him to be able to sign a contract and just sort of sweep this under the rug. And look, I didn't investigate this personally, so I don't know what the evidence exactly is that they do or do not have. But if you look at it, does it seem like Evander Kane learned his lesson from the fake ID, fake COVID vaccination card he allegedly showed his team? Doesn't seem that way based on what the allegations are, and
Right.
it doesn't fill me with confidence that we've seen the last controversy involving Evander Kane.
Well, he's certainly going to have an opportunity on the ice. He signed with Edmonton for $750,000 in salary, $625,000 in a signing bonus. It's about a $2.1 million cap hit for Edmonton. There's a no move clause in his contract as well, and Jeff Villette on Twitter made an interesting point about that no move clause, that it basically protects Kane from getting sent to the AHL if anything goes south with him. And, it limits Edmonton's options moving forward because he wanted to choose his destination and didn't want a chance of being moved anywhere else.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised he got that choice, given all of the circumstances surrounding his availability. But maybe there were other suitors out there and they had to include that in order to get him to sign. If there are problems, and I know there were problems in the locker room alleged in San Jose, what are they going to do? Just sit him out? Just make him a black ace indefinitely because his teammates don't want to play with him? If it comes to that, it hasn't yet. Obviously, he just signed, but that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about him more in the future. I hope it's just for scoring goals because I'm kind of sick of him. But we're going to totally switch gears coming up next and talk about jersey retirements happening tonight, and most specifically for the King Henrik Lundqvist. But first, I'm going to talk about our friends over at Built Bar. And it is still the tail end of January, so that means you can still have a New Year's resolution. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure to include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is a protein bar, but it tastes just like a candy bar. Some of them even taste better, to be honest. They make it so easy to stick to your resolution. Unlike other protein bars, which sometimes are chalky or taste like chemicals, if you want to eat healthy but not be boring, Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. So if you're craving a snack or treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. Your typical Built Bar has 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. There are so many great flavors to choose from. I like the peanut butter brownie and the salted caramel. But Built Bar is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out built.com often to see what's new. While you're there, use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Once again, thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Well, last August, we got some heartbreaking news that after a 15-year career, Henrik Lundqvist was hanging up the skates. And, he was supposed to play a 16th season with the Washington Capitals last year. But as we know, he had to sit out that season after having a heart issue. And thought he might come back. He had started skating, but he just decided, with him and his doctors, that it was just time to step aside. And man, what a career! Drafted in 2000, like so long ago, it seems like, but it also seems like yesterday. Seventh round, by the way, 205th overall. So by the New York Rangers. And I think, obviously so many achievements in his career. He won the Vezina in 2012. He got a gold medal with Team Sweden in the Turin Olympics in 2006. Also won a world championship with that team. But I think, like, for me, the thing I appreciate about him the most is his consistency. Like in the early 2010s, early mid 2010s, like he just absolutely was the backstop for the New York Rangers.
He really was. And, you have to go back and remember where the Rangers were before he came in 2005, 2006 and became their starting goalie. I mean, Kevin Weeks was projected to be the starter, and Weeks got hurt early in the season.
Mhm.
And Lundqvist came in, took over, and never looked back. And before, that was the first season after the year that was lost to the lockout, and the Rangers organization was in disarray. They had just traded Brian Leetch. Mark Messier had retired. It was like a fire sale there. Nobody expected anything from them, and Lundqvist comes along and leads them to the playoffs in his first season, leads them to the Stanley Cup final in 2014. And, the beautiful thing about Lundqvist, his consistency on the ice, always a gentleman. Anytime I had the chance to interview him, he was always great to talk to. And then just the way he fit in with the culture of New York also, and then his fashion sense and his just the way he sort of ingratiated himself in and fit in so well with New York City and the Rangers and just the culture of the area. He really sort of rose above hockey in that sense. And on the ice, lights out. The only blemish, and I'll put that in air quotes, is that he didn't quite win a Stanley Cup. Getting them to the final that one time was as close as he got. But every
Right.
other accomplishment you can have on the ice, Henrik Lundqvist did it.
Yeah, he's sixth all time in wins for a goalie at 459. He had a career 2.43 goals against average, 918 save percentage. His win total is the most ever for a European born goalie. If you look at the all-time wins list right now, Marc-Andre Fleury is above him on the list. He's the only active player above him on that all-time list, but Carey Price is the next below at 360. So it's going to be hard pressed for many goalies to even, attempt to achieve what he has in terms of total wins. He's 64 regular season shutouts, which is 10th all time. And, you talk about that consistency. He was in the top five for the Vezina voting four times in 6 years in that peak period for him. He was a finalist three times, and he never finished lower than sixth in the voting, which is pretty remarkable. And I'm going to say this just because I have to say this as a Flyers person, but the only season in his first 12 years the Rangers did not make the playoffs was that 2009-10 season where the Flyers eliminated them in the last game in a shootout. So,
I
um,
remember that. Yep. Yep.
yeah, so of course I have that memory personally, but you cannot deny the brilliance of his play. I do want to talk about his style a little bit because I think that, he was known for playing deep in the crease, which is not something you see with a lot of guys right now. Like you'll see goalies come out a lot and try and take away angles, but he just chose to stay a little bit deeper in the crease, and it allowed him to get side to side a little bit better. And I think that was part of what made him so fun to watch, that his reaction times were able to be so quick because he was pretty solidly in the crease.
His reflexes were outstanding.
Yeah.
And even among goalies, who all have to have really good reflexes to be able to do what they do. So yeah, no question about that. And his style, it's pretty unique when you sort of think about the way it works. And he got it done. It was unorthodox, but uh, like you said, so consistent, and not just consistently good, consistently excellent.
Yeah, it was always, an uphill climb, especially at Madison Square Garden. All the games I watched of the Flyers coming into MSG, and you see Lundqvist's name up there, and you're like, oh no, this is going to be a tough one. I also, style wise, he did that half butterfly
Hmm.
thing that, again, like you said, is completely unique. Nobody does that right now, really. Just maybe one or two other guys left in the league do anything like that. And, you know, I I do, talk about his legacy sometimes. And when he signed that last contract with the Rangers, I thought, yeah, he just sort of committed himself to this team in New York, like you were talking about, that he's so ingrained in this city that he's probably willing to give up a Stanley Cup for it, because it was very clear to me, at least at that point, that the Rangers were not going to be in contention for the remainder of that last contract. But he did it anyway because he loved the city, he loved the team, and he's so ingrained in the culture here. He's a rock star too. And, I think that a lot of people might say, oh, he gave up his chance. But I think he would probably say that he gained more for doing it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And he to the people of New York, he was more than a hockey player, and a great hockey player on the ice, but more than a hockey player. He was a part of the community and a trendsetter. And yeah, I think you could say he gave up his chance, but I think he made the right decision for Henrik Lundqvist.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it'll be, I think, a little teary to see that number 30 go up into the rafters tonight, but I will definitely be watching. There's another jersey headed up in Dallas as well, and that's for Sergei Zubov.
Yeah, and I have always been a big Sergei Zubov fan. One of those guys who, doesn't make a lot of headlines, isn't flashy, but is so consistently good. Trivia question: the Rangers' only Stanley Cup win since 1940 was in 1994. Who was the leading scorer on the 1993-94 Rangers? It wasn't Brian Leetch. It wasn't Mark Messier. It was actually Sergei Zubov with 89 points in 78
Mm-hmm.
games. Zubov was smart with the puck. He was steady. He was an excellent playmaker and passer. Won two Stanley Cups with the Dallas Stars later in his career after leaving New York, went to Pittsburgh, then went to Dallas. And, he's one of those guys who I think you need to sort of watch every day to appreciate fully, but just so good with the puck, steady defensively, not outstanding, but smart and steady on defense, and a great playmaker, very, very good on the power play. And just one of those guys who was always one of the best in the league. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason, and to have his number 56 raised to the rafters in Dallas, I think is a fitting tribute to what he accomplished in his career and what he meant to the Dallas Stars once, he got there and really became an important part of their success in the late 90s and into the early 2000s.
Yeah, I really think he helped cement Dallas's identity as a team, where they were still one of the new kids on the block, I think,
Hmm.
back then. And with the relocation and everything, and I feel like he was just such an integral part of putting the Dallas Stars on the map.
Yeah, I agree. When you think of the Dallas Stars, you think of Mike Modano, you
Mike
think of
Modano and
Sergei
him.
Zubov, and yeah,
Hmm.
and maybe Eddie Belfour a little bit, Brett Hull, but you can't talk about those great teams without talking about Sergei Zubov, and he is, near the top of the conversation when you talk about those great Dallas Stars teams.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to talk about the slate of games up ahead. And if you want to bet on any of them, I would absolutely go to Bet Online. And Bet Online is wishing you a happy new betting year as we continue the march to the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year and they've got a new updated desktop and mobile website, so sign up today and you'll receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code locked on, that's all one word, to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers available this year. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Gil. So before we get into those weekend games, just have a few numbers I want to run by you. A couple of them I think you'll be able to guess what they are, but let's start with the number 965.
965. Yeah, that's Keith Yandel's consecutive game streak.
Exactly. Yeah, Keith Yendo, who is on my Philadelphia Flyers, is now the new NHL Iron Man, and for it was touch and go there for a little bit this season. I think with COVID and everything, the fact that he was never on the COVID list, I think, is a minor miracle, and what a remarkable achievement for him to get through that many games and not have an injury or not get sick, and it's just so impressive.
It is, and hockey is such a physical game. There is no way that out of those 965 games, there weren't games that he could have easily sat out. And to tough it out, to go through all of that, and to persevere, it really says something. I mean, you're talking about, what, 11, 12 seasons worth of games, not missing a game. So,
Mm.
you know, kudos to Keith Yandel, and congratulations. It's a well-earned distinction. And let's see how much longer he can keep it going. I hope that he's able to keep going and add to that number, maybe to be the first player ever to reach 1,000 games.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a thing. The next number is 62.
62. And what is 62?
That is the number of shots on goal the Calgary Flames got against Columbus earlier in the week. That is the fourth highest shots by a team in a regular season game. The most was 73 by the Boston Bruins in 1991, but 62 shots on goal, man.
Yeah, I remember that game. That was against Quebec way back in the day. But yeah, that's more than a shot on goal per minute. And that doesn't include shots that hit the post, went wide, and all of that. So, boy, you got to feel for the goalie in a game like
Yeah.
that. But pretty impressive achievement, especially because, you compare it to when the record was set back in the early 90s. That was a much more wide open era of hockey. To get 62 shots on goal now in 2022 is maybe even more impressive than the record that was set back then.
Yeah. The next number on my list is 1.
One. Okay, what is one?
1 is the first NHL goal scored by Quentin Byfield of the LA Kings. He was drafted second overall by the Kings in 2020. He's the highest drafted black player in NHL history, and he's got his first goal.
Yeah, I saw that last night because it came against my Islanders. And yeah, I mean, it was a pretty impressive shot, too. Very happy for the kid. You could see how excited he and his teammates were about the goal. And look, he's what, 20 years old? I think he's got a very bright future in this league.
Absolutely. Our next number is 1,000.
1,000. 1,000. 1,000. What is 1,000?
Also, in last night's Kings Islanders game, Drew Dowdy played
Yes.
his 1,000th NHL game.
Yeah, and it was great. All of the Kings players, when they were getting to the arena, coming off the bus, they all wore masks that looked like Drew Dowdy's face with the missing tooth and all of that. So that was a nice, funny touch. But yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations to Drew Dowdy on reaching 1,000 games. And that is excuse me, that is a real achievement. It means you have to play at a consistently high level for a long time, and Drew Dowdy overcame a lot of uh, issues, injuries and the like over the course of his career. He's been on some Stanley Cup teams as well, and been one of the best defensemen in the league for a long time. So congratulations, Drew Dowdy. 1,000 games, nothing to take lightly at all.
Our last number on the list is 100.
100, and that is
It's a little bit of a cheat, but it's not a cheat for her, but it's not NHL, so not necessarily expect you to guess it. But Madison Packer of the Metropolitan Riveters in the PHF got her 100th point in the league, formerly known as the NWHL. She is the first Riveters player to do that and the second in the league overall. This is the seventh season for the league, and the first to have done it was Jillian Dempsey on the Boston Pride. She did that last year.
well, congratulations. That is a great accomplishment, and good that you're including this in our show. I think it's important to highlight the accomplishments in women's hockey. I think it's great.
Absolutely. All right, looking ahead to this weekend's games, of course, tonight, our two games we've already talked about a little bit, the Wild at Rangers for the Henrik Lundqvist retirement ceremony and Caps at Dallas for the Sergei Zubov retirement ceremony.
Yeah, and those should be some pretty good games too. I mean, the Rangers are in the fight for first place. The Wild are a contender in their division, and I always wonder, and this sort of applies to both games. But when you have those ceremonies before the game, and very often the game starts a little bit later, and the players sort of have their routine broken. I always wonder, whether it affects the home team or the visiting team more to have one of those ceremonies
Right.
before the game.
It's a good question. I know like people get extra nerves or something around those sorts of games and they can go south. I think it's more in the case of banner raising ceremonies for that
Yeah,
team that it's more of a curse. I think jersey retirement ceremonies are a little bit more, it's more external to the guys playing. So I think it's a little easier to handle those, but it does throw the routines off a little bit.
it does. And Washington Dallas is also a big matchup, and the Stars need to string some wins together. Capitals have been slumping a little bit lately, but two quality teams both in the fight for their respective playoff races. So, good game to see.
On Saturday, there are 11 games on the schedule, so a lot of games to choose from. I think if I was putting together a day of hockey and, on the East Coast, there's going to be some snow, so maybe you're stuck inside and want to watch a lot of hockey. Maybe start off with Anaheim at Ottawa in the early afternoon, then go to Winnipeg at St. Louis in the mid afternoon, and then in the evening, watch Vegas at Tampa, and then late night, Vancouver at Calgary.
Well, you've got it all planned out, and I know we're probably getting snowed in here. So, yeah. Vancouver at Calgary, always a nice Western Canadian matchup. But
Yeah.
I think Vegas and Tampa is probably the best game on the schedule. The two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, and Vegas is in first place in their division. So, yeah, I mean, if you're stuck on the East Coast with this major nor'easter that's supposed to affect a lot of the East Coast, plenty of good hockey to watch as long as the power stays on. So,
That is true. On Sunday, I think, there's a couple of games of interest. The Kings at the Penguins, And I say that just because Jeff Carter just signed a contract extension with the Penguins, playing up against his old team. So that's always a fun narrative to watch. And then I think Boston versus Dallas should also be a really great game.
Yeah, that should be a good one. And again, you have two teams right in the thick of the playoff hunt, but not in first place. So they're sort of battling for playoff position and to solidify it. And I like the Kings Penguins game as well. And I like the Jeff Carter angle that you took.
Well, I always think about Jeff Carter and what could have been.
Absolutely.
All right, that'll do it for today's show. Gil, what you got going on with the Monday show and Locked On Isles?
Well, Locked On Isles, this week we talked a lot about the passing of Clark Gillies, which was
Right.
shocking, only 67 years old. And then, Islanders have two games this weekend, so we'll have lots to talk about on Monday. And Monday we'll probably address depending on what the biggest stories are over the weekend, but we'll probably address some of the jersey retirements and some of the big stories from around the league.
Excellent. Yeah, in Flyers land, we've got a lot of discussion going on about what to do with this team, and GM Chuck Fletcher just had a press conference kind of laying out what his thoughts were, and we're still reacting to it and figuring out what to do between now and the trade deadline. So head on over to Locked On Flyers, and we'll be talking about all of that. And of course, both Gil and I will be back next Friday to recap the week that was and look ahead to next weekend's slate of NHL games. That'll end it for today. And you made us your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Take care.